question. And I do want to reiterate that we're not talking about metro districts in general or metro districts issuing debt. We're talking about a very specific aspect of that. And to that, then, is there not a mechanism for the developer to be reimbursed under several mechanisms that is separate from the developer then buying his own bonds and benefiting from that initial reimbursement at a very high rate? We'll go Ms. Tanaka.
Okay, Madam Chair, and then I'll toss it over to Mr. Thomas if you don't mind. Yes, there is an agreement commonly entered into, which is a reimbursement agreement with the developer, and that does include a cost certification process and an interest rate component because they're carrying that cost. The issue is that at some point in time, if there's a loss of guarantee that will be repaid, it's converted into a debt. And so at first it can start as an annually appropriated agreement that gets outside of the definition of debt under Tabor, but at some point that can be converted over if they've not been repaid by a certain time, just to ensure that they can get that money out of it. And that's when you start to see that conversion over into an actual debt instrument. So there's kind of a birthing of that at that level initially, and then it ends up converting over into a debt at a certain point in time.
Where am I? Please proceed if you wanted to answer.
Sure. I think the other component that's important to point out is the reimbursement agreements are subject to annual appropriation by the board. A goal of a district is over time you transition to residents. And those residents, unless if there's a compelling obligation to pay for those infrastructure improvements, they might not choose to do so. So it's a big risk factor. If I'm going to front the money to build infrastructure and I don't have some sort of recourse to know that I'm going to get paid back, then that's a massive risk factor. So there is a mechanism in place, but unless if there's a debt obligation, there's no compulsion by a future board to actually pay for any of that.